2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. I am your host for this evening's entertainment, and we have particularly, actually, it was voted in, and we are going to be talking about the 1994 film The Mask, starring Jim Carrey, Cameron Diaz, Peter Riegert, Peter Green.
Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz. That's the bullet point of this movie from the director of The Blob, like the 80s remake Blob.
And Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Chuck Russell.
Mm-hmm. Both fun films. Both
Dream Warriors and The Blob. That's a hell of a pedigree.
Yep.
Before we get into first impressions here, though, I'd like to state what IMDb says about this film, kind of a synopsis. Bank clerk Stanley Ipkiss is transformed into a manic superhero when he wears a mysterious mask. So,
okay. Pretty good summary.
No, let's go with you, Dustin, since you're
since we're going
here.
Okay, well, I first saw this movie when it was new as a child in 1994, 5-ish, and I loved it. Like, I love everything about this movie. Like, I cannot think of a single negative that this movie has. Like, it just blows you away and moves at like a breakneck pace. It's like an experience more so than a movie.
Okay.
Like, and it always puts me in a good mood.
I myself saw this in the drive-in. My parents actually took us to see, I think we saw The Client. My mom didn't like that movie, so we tuned into the one behind us. And it just so happened to be The Mask. And then we watched The Lion King. Right afterwards, and I think there was a fourth movie that was playing at the time, but I forget exactly which one. But we've actually
that's a pretty good assortment, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was tuning into The Client as well. So.
I love The Client.
What the heck is that?
The Client, I believe, was based on a John Grisham novel.
It was, and it introduced the world of Brad Renfro.
It had Susan Sarandon,
Tommy Lee Jones, Brad Renfro.
Yep, very good movie. But in any case, but I really love. This is my ultimate favorite, like, Jim Carrey movie, and I think out of all of his films, even his later ones, this was his best film.
This is probably the best Jim Carrey movie. I agree.
I enjoy it every single time. He goes all out with the role. His antics go along with it, and it's just a perfect movie, a perfect romantic comedy too. You know, it's like your perfect date movie. You know, so. But you know, it's got Ben Stein in it, who was also Casper.
Yes, I forgot he was in this. It's awesome.
So
it's basically just a cameo.
Well, he was in everything cameo-wise back in those days. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you needed someone to be your complete straight man.
Oh yeah, he was definitely
right to the point where they could almost put you to bed.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the person to when Stanley came to him. He was like, "How do I go to Tina?" And he's like, "Why don't you go as the Mask and
yourself
as yourself,
one beautiful person?
If I tell you, will you leave my office?"
Right. So, Forrest, why don't you tell us your first impressions of this movie?
Okay, so I saw this in theaters when it came out. I was 6 years old at the time. My grandfather took me, my uncle to see it, and I immediately was a fan. I love like yeah, it really played up to Jim Carrey's strengths as like a as like a real life rubber faced cartoon character.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it was just like as a comedy, it's very as a comedy, it's completely solid. For me, it's probably my second favorite Jim Carrey movie. My overall favorite is The Cable Guy. And although this would have probably been my favorite Jim Carrey movie, but then just a few years after this movie came out, I actually discovered the Dark Horse comic book series, and my avatar, as you can see, my avatar, I have the is actually the original comic book version of The Mask, and that kind of so I still love the movie, but it sort of like altered my opinion. It's at the same time it also like kind of like I couldn't quite look at the movie the same way after reading the comic. Although I would say, there's a lot of cases where like comic books based on adult material that are like meant for more mature readers get turned into movies that are more palatable for
mainstream audiences.
Right.
Yeah, like I think Spawn, like for example, I think Spawn's one of the worst offenders of that. Whereas I think strangely, The Mask, they took this gory, violent adult comic book and synthesized into something that kids could watch, and somehow they actually made it work.
Right.
I've read a couple of those comics, and I'd argue that it actually works better than the comics in some respects.
Well, Dark Horse Comics came out with The Mask series before the film. So, having that as a basis, ultimately, the adaptation of the film would ultimately be its own vision if it was guided under the right director. So that being said, taking it to the level where you could take your kids to see this film, and yet still have it be a tad violent. I actually think that Dorian Gray's boss is uberly creepy. I mean,
Nico.
Yeah, Nico. Nico is like that kind of a boss where his muscle is what scares you the most. His minions of men.
Just what he's able to do to Dorian in that scene where he is intimidating him
with the golf club,
and he barely, he doesn't actually do anything in the scene, but you get the sense of how menacing this person is.
Yeah.
Well, he shoots a golf ball. He forces him to put the pick in his mouth, and he hits the ball right off of that. And that's kind of messed up. Yeah.
I mean, for me, that scene still is probably like with all the cartoon violence in that movie. That scene is probably the most painful to one of the most.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
I could feel his teeth, just hurting after that point.
Yeah.
Brandon, why don't you tell us your first views of this film?
So I had a bit of a different angle with it. Forrest was talking about how he read the comics. I think he said afterwards. I actually was a huge comic book fan. Before I collected movies, I obsessed over comics. And Dark Horse was one of those, back in the early 90s, Dark Horse, Image, Valiant, all those independent ones, they were just like, that's the cool thing to follow because they're not following the rules. They don't have the comics code.
They were grimdark.
Yeah. And sometimes they were just dark to be the sake of dark. Savage Dragon is a good example. I always like to poke that one was dark just because it wanted to be.
Because it could. He was a guest star in like everything too.
But when I watched... And I looked at The Mask, and I looked at it, and I thought, this is amusing. Marvel had done something similar in the around that time as well, called Slapstick, and I still have that one. Also using that kind of humor, but of course they were dealing with the comics code, so theirs was more kid-friendly. And so when I was watching this, I felt like it was more akin to Slapstick than it was The Mask. But I could see exactly where some of these scenes were, like the balloon animal scene, scenes that were totally lifted. But unlike in the movie and the comic books, he basically slaughters all those people with a machine gun
Yeah.
instead. He's constantly getting holes, like actual bloody holes in his head, ripping skin off his face, things like that. So I looked at this and I saw this is like this is a kind of a cop out when I was thinking about the movie. So I wasn't taken aback by it originally, like most people. Like, ooh, this is awesome, and it annoyed me how popular it was. Later on, I got to appreciate it much more.
Yeah.
For what it was and how it was able to take a lot of those elements and funnel it to where it could apply to general audiences. But as a moody teenager, you're not really thinking like that. So it's, as an adult who can think abstractly, it's a much easier run. Now, I will say this, though, is far from my favorite Jim Carrey film. But I do think that it was an amazing use of his manic energy
Exactly.
that wasn't used as a basic punchline as they used it for Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, which I did appreciate that part.
What about your take on this, Jake? What where are you come from?
Well, this is one that I definitely knew of it when it came out. And I feel like, if memory serves, this came out in the wake of Ace Ventura. And
Yeah.
I will admit, as a kid, I loved Ace Ventura. As a kid, I thought it was just this hilarious movie. Now that I'm a little older, I know better, but I feel like it's still in both films. Again, using his manic energy, they were really, really good for that. I agree with Brandon. This is nowhere close in my mind to my mind, the very best Jim Carrey movie is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And I absolutely love The Truman Show. And he's, I've liked his more dramatic.
The Majestic. The Majestic.
The Majestic was an underrated film. Yes, very much
very
underrated. But I did see this. I don't think I was even aware it was a comic when I first saw it. And I loved it for what it was. This actually was a little bit ahead of the neo swing boom in the late 90s.
Yep.
And I have always loved this kind of music. And I can partially thank this movie, I think, for being ready for that when it came out. Because it does have a little bit of a neo swing vibe to it.
Oh yeah.
Like I said,
and everything.
What's that?
With the zoot suit and everything.
He has a couple of zoot suits, and those are, and of course on the cover, that's the iconic look. And actually, like I said, between the previous episode where we covered Cowboy Bebop, the second episode is called Stray Dog Strut, which is a reference to the Stray Cats iconic theme. And I played that between the two discussions, and I was like, oh man, it was such a great segue because it marries the sensibilities of both movies so well. But I really love, this was of course also the world's introduction to Cameron Diaz, and like many people, I fell instantly in love. And it's got some great stuff going on in it. It does get a little over the top cartoony, of course.
That's the idea.
Loves cartoons.
Now, and as a comic adaptation, I have not read the series, and from what I've heard, I'd probably have mixed feelings. I
don't think you'd have been able to deal with a full live action adaptation.
I tend to be.
It made Darkman vibes.
Darkman was. I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. But anyway,
Darkman was awesome.
I tend to be a little bit of a comic purist when it comes to adaptations, and I get really upset when they're changed unrecognizably from the source material because the studio said so or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I can think of at least one instance where I did read the comic and I saw the movie, and they are totally different, and I thoroughly loved both. and that was Kingsman: The Secret Service. I don't know why they changed it so radically from the comic, but they did, and it worked. This is one that, from what I hear, it worked. I may tackle the comic one day, but as a standalone, it works just fine. So
I will just say right now, in the comics, Stanley Ipkiss's role is a lot smaller than it is in the
I
movie.
hear he gets killed off.
Oh yeah, they
pretty
pass.
quickly.
They pass the mask over to somebody else really quickly.
Yeah, he gets killed off and then
He's a raging psycho in the comics who dies
Right.
pretty much right away, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yep, and
Something like that.
okay, so like the heroic mask we see in the movie, in the comics, it was actually Kellaway was the
I was
heroic.
gonna say that was the cop. Yeah, that was doing that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because he was like, I was going to use this, and it became more of a. He's like, I'm going to use this to be a vigilante.
So let's look at the characters here. Let's look at Stanley Ipkiss first. What do we think of Stanley Ipkiss's character? Anyone?
It's a standard 90s hero.
Well, he's your standard nice guy Jim Carrey role. I mean, he's really good at playing that really nice, quiet. He's kind of like his character in Eternal Sunshine, but less repressed. A lot like his character in The Majestic, actually. He's this nice, likable guy who just has the misfortune of being incredibly awkward and not
Kind of a pushover.
very much a pushover. He has no confidence, none at all.
I feel like he repeated that role like over and over again later on.
Yeah.
Or versions of it.
Mm.
Okay. What do we think about Cameron Diaz's character?
She was the singer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Schoolboy.
I want to say this was something, and I watched it this time, and I felt genuinely impressed by the movie because the movie sets you up thinking that she's just the character that, that this guy is going to look at and like idolize, and then he'll discover that the reporter was the one for him at the end because everything on the surface and all that stuff, because that's a repeated theme. And I love that they changed that around and they made her character a lot less one note than that.
You find out very quickly that she's conning him, but the reporter you don't find out until almost the end.
At the end of the second.
You said you weren't going to hurt him.
Yeah.
I lied.
I'm making 50 grand out of this.
Well, so she thought. So apparently a deleted scene had her
going to a printing press.
Had her die in a printing press.
Yes.
I saw that and I was like, it's a good thing they cut that because that
was really dark.
Yeah.
It did make it into the comic book adaptation of the movie though.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been right into the comics wheelhouse right there.
But one thing that I think is really interesting, sort of, I guess, art imitating life or life imitating art or whatever. Cameron Diaz, like I said, this was her first film role. She was a model at the time, and apparently the director fought for her to get the role. He said that, you cast her or I'll walk is what I read apparently, and the studio wouldn't have it because she was a no-name. But he ended up winning the fight apparently.
It was only a teenager when the movie was made.
What's that?
I said she was literally only a teenager when that movie was made.
Mm-hmm. She was about 21 years old.
About 21, yeah. And she was very cute at that age. But anyway, but that's the thing. Like she was a model. She was hired to play this sexpot character. And at first, I kind of started this going, oh God, where is this like another case of something that won't age well? But then as I watched the movie, the thing is, Cameron Diaz can act.
Yeah.
And as the movie goes on, you come to realize that there is more nuance to the character than you were set up to believe. And she actually really knocks it out of the park, I think. She did a really good job.
And then look at the career she went on to have.
Oh, yeah.
Me and John Malkovich, Gangs of New York.
Right. Yeah.
Annie, which is a total opposite role of this, where she almost looks like a ratty looking.
Well, that's like being John Malkovich. I mean,
It impressed me that her character was much more complex.
Ironically, I can't recall her in any of her movies. Although, was she in Titanic?
No. She was Mary.
She was the voice of Fiona in Shrek.
Yes.
Later on,
Yeah.
so
She was in the first two Charlie's Angels movies.
I am proven an idiot.
Let's see here. I'm sure there's some others, but I know there's some others. But anyway, Vanilla Sky was another one.
Vanilla Sky was good.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
let's look at some of the side characters here. I mean, we got his friend that works with him in the bank,
Charlie.
Charlie.
Richard Jenny.
He's kind of like your village idiot, but he means well.
Charlie is like the cool. Charlie is like your cool friend.
He's the wingman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like anybody else, they sort of care about him, but they don't care about him at the same time. They just kind of leave him hanging.
Well,
at the club, yeah.
He's got a landlady that lives in the same building as him. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever lived in a rented place where your landlord is like in the same building. It is a pain in the neck, especially especially if they know your habits.
Right.
What do we think of Mrs. Peaman?
She's the annoying landlady.
I liked when she took out the shotgun. I thought that was.
Oh yeah.
So she draws that gun so fast, like she's like ready to use it.
Yeah.
You know she's killed a couple people already.
Yep.
You know?
Like Lord knows the previous tenants. What happened to the previous tenants of Stanley's apartment?
They didn't pay the rent. Actually, you know what's funny is that whole thought reminds me of Dogma, where Silent Bob throws the person from the train. They look at him and he just says, "No
tickets."
No ticket.
Yeah, lovely Indiana Jones reference there. What's that?
What do we think about Dorian, the main villain in here?
Dorian is your typical Peter Green character. This dude looks like a villain, and he has played a lot of, like, the year this came out, he was Zed in Pulp Fiction. He played Redfoot in The Usual Suspects. He was in Under Siege Dark Territory. He had a lot of good villain roles in the 90s, and he had a great role in the aughts. He had a show that ended way too soon. He played Doki Farrell in the Black Donnellys. I wish that show had gotten a second season, but he was the chief antagonist all throughout that. He is so good at playing someone you just cannot stand.
And in all fairness for the movie, in all fairness for the movie in this one, he had to play that villain that doesn't even hide it. There's where he's like, whereas Ipkiss is everything is buried under the surface. He buries everything. This guy wears everything on top of him, which is why when he becomes like the superpowered villain, he really doesn't change all that much. He just
gets pumped up.
He becomes the Incredible Hulk, basically.
He wouldn't like it when he's angry.
Except with more of a rockabilly look to him, you know. So,
he gains intense eyebrow ridges. Eyebrow ridges and cheekbones. That's pretty much all his transformation is.
And like a poof in the a teased back poof in the of hair,
pompadour hair.
Yeah.
Well, he has that like thug like walk, like kind of like caveman walk. I should say that. That's a better way of looking.
Well,
at
the
Neanderthal walk.
Before I get into the other two side characters, I figure let's do kind of a play of the plot here. So Stanley, he ends up finding this mask after having been shucked out of the way from having a chance to go to the Coco Bongo Club, which is this hottest joint in town. I mean, even the car people that were taking care of his car, those guys were jerks.
Yep.
Oh yeah, they represent a lot of car people that operate like private.
I like how the one guy, he kind of pulls this piece out of the car. What's this? I don't know, about 700.
By the way, I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but that garage is the same.
Right.
Is also the Ghostbusters, the interior of the Ghostbusters headquarters.
I
read
thought
that,
it looked familiar.
It was also used in Big Trouble in Little China.
I literally watched that last week. Again, I thought it looked so familiar. I couldn't figure out why.
Right.
But in any case, he finds this mask which we didn't even say at the beginning, but evidently there were some scuba divers that were searching for something at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, they get owned.
And they happen to open this chest where the mask just kind of floats to the surface. And when Stanley finds it, he thinks that it's a person, so he goes in, tries to save it, and he gets caught with the mask in his hand, of course, and he takes the mask home. But the next thing in the show that I wanted to talk about is Milo.
Yes.
What did we think of the dog that Stanley gets?
This was the thing in the 90s. You had to have a cute dog in your movie, and goddamn,
Jack Russell Terrier.
That breed of dog too. That breed of dog was in everything.
I had to check and make sure this wasn't the same dog that was in Ernest, because he had that little dog that was the same basic role, and it wasn't. But yeah, there was the one in Ernest and the one on Frasier, and then there was
Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah.
But Milo, the dog, is actually named Max in real life. But we get. I think that Milo is kind of a central character here too, because he's like his Kato to his Green Hornet, So you always got to have your backup buddy, and it just so happens to be Milo. So
I mean, when Milo gets put on the mask, that's like he steals the movie right there.
So
Milo was so cool.
Here we have him bringing this mask home, and he just and he ends up putting it on, and he becomes this green-faced yellow zoot suit character.
Well, the zoot suit, I think, was the second or third time.
That was the second suit.
That doesn't happen until he gets to the club.
Oh yeah, that's right.
In the second transformation, the first time he puts on the mask, he goes nuts, gets shot at, kills sometime, gets shot at by his landlady, and then he takes his revenge on
a street gang
on the mechanics.
The car shark, yeah.
But
there's where you have to by the street gang.
You have to kind of enjoy this segment once he turns into the mask, because he goes out into the hallway and this alarm clock just shoots up out of his pocket, and it's like and it kind of reminds me of some of the different animation segments in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, totally.
Well, he did what you could call almost a stereo. It's almost like a cliche in those old cartoons. Like he's like, I need to be very quiet, so he does the big-footed sneak, and the alarm, of course, jumps out of his pocket because, of course.
And you can tell that there's an inherent meanness, which is more so prevalent in the comics. But you can see like where a lot of that, and that's the thing when he discovers the mask is, Loki's like an element of Loki, an element of chaos that brings forth a lot of those hidden
He
ambitions.
doesn't find that out later until Ben Stein's character.
Yeah.
But I should mention there was this was actually a scene that was it's I believe you can find it in the deleted scenes on the DVD or the Blu-ray, but there was a prologue where a group of Vikings
appears, where Leif Erikson arrives in the New World to bury the mask. Like that's why he's going to the New World. I think the line is something to the effect of, "We've traveled to the ends of the earth to hide this, and that might not be enough."
Yes. And of course they explain it even more. They try to do a lot more exposition in Son of the Mask, which probably is better forgotten. But they do try and
Son of the what
give you
now?
more background on it. The sequel.
The what now?
Terrible.
You never heard of this?
The terrible sequel, The Son of the Mask.
I know of no sequel. What are you talking about? This movie has no sequels.
All that happened after this was the cartoon series.
Yeah, let's forget that sequel entirely. But we may eventually talk about it and leave it as a separate entity.
Right.
It should really just be a fan film. So
that is the concept of a for a monthly thing. Sequels that never should have happened.
Exactly. Exactly. Sequels that shouldn't exist.
Right. So we have that, and then the next morning we meet Lieutenant Mitch Kellaway, who he knocks on the door,
and he's got some outlandish pajamas on him.
Well,
pajamas.
and I like that. I always like that, where it's like he says something about what happened, and Stanley's like, "That's impossible. Those pajamas are impossible. This really happened." Yeah,
that's another.
I really like how the actor portrayed him. I mean, Peter Regent was it Regent?
Peter Regent
did a great job with that role. He did a great job.
And of course, he had a classic role.
Tired of his job.
He had like a classic role on National Lampoon's Animal House. I was like, I thought he looked familiar, huh?
Yeah, he was Boone in Animal House.
Yeah. Was that what they called him? He's listed here as Donald Schoenstein, but Boone was
Boone was his nickname.
His nickname, yeah, right. I'd forgotten that. I need to see that again.
One of my top 5 movies.
He's had a few other good ones over the years too. He's one of those actors that shows up and you're like, I know that guy. Why do I know that guy?
See, that's another thing. This movie is so damn quotable or re-quotable. There are so many lines in here that you can just take away from the movie and be like, smoking! And take that and run with it, And
for me, it's probably
Jim Carrey was.
I'm roadkill.
Look, Ma, I'm roadkill.
And then Jim Carrey was the perfect actor to play the Mask because the Mask is a living cartoon.
Yeah.
And really the only person that truly brings that Warner Brothers cartoon spirit and energy is Jim Carrey. I mean, he really was a living embodiment of that character.
And
I could even have seen them doing a rated R version of that.
With him.
I don't know if Jim Carrey would have been willing to do that.
He definitely wouldn't now.
I feel like Jim Carrey could do it now, but not back then.
Yeah. Well, no, he definitely
wouldn't do it now. Mm-hmm.
He came out against, even though he co-starred in Kick-Ass 2, he came out against the movie because it was too violent.
Yeah.
So, and Kick-Ass 2 was nothing.
Around the time that he started doing stuff like Me, Myself, and Irene and The Cable Guy, I think the Jim Carrey of that time could have done.
Probably could have, yeah.
Oh yeah. I think he was willing to take anything by that at that point.
Well, in any case, yeah, that's where we kind of go back to Cameron Diaz's character, where she ends up walking into to the bank that he works at, and she wants. Well, what she says is totally different than what she's there for, but she walks in, and immediately she has a presence in the bank, among others. And she ends up saying that she wants to open up an account where
I want to open up an account, but she's really doing reconnaissance for her boyfriend who wants to rob the bank. She has a camera in her purse, looking at the vault,
positioning it every which way while she's juxtapositioning Stanley Ipkiss's power tie. So
yeah, she's like trying to seduce him by messing with his tie.
Yeah,
and it's working. It's working pretty well.
Oh,
yeah, I was gonna say try nothing.
checking
and like I said, that's the thing. I really am glad that they decided to go the way that they did with that and make her the main female love interest, because it really did feel like a bait and switch for a little while. Because most of these movies, it goes for that, like the woman who is the sex pot character, who is just using him. They find out by the time he finds out, like, okay, she's the bad person, and then she's like, the main character goes, no, I am above you now. I will go with this other person who loved me all along. But they didn't go with that, so I thought that was really good.
I thought so too. I mean, in the very beginning, we see Stanley Ipkiss giving 2 tickets away to a female,
coworker.
I guess a coworker, and she cons him into
giving her both tickets and not going with him.
Yeah,
you know that she's going with her boyfriend and not like some friend of hers.
That kind of brings in the vast the reporter that is checking into the happenings that happened at the automobile place. And
Peggy Grant. I liked her introduction because it was something like, I think it was Charlie was talking to him. And he's like, a woman will walk into your life, and he sees this woman approaching, and he describes her down to what she's wearing and what she's doing. And
red hair, blushing lips,
right. And it's like Stanley's like, wow, that was very specific. He looks up and sees her. But you're talking about your bait and switches, not only in the movie, but for me personally, this was her follow-up role, if I'm not mistaken, or it was almost her follow-up role. The main movie I know Amy Yasbeck from, who is the one that plays her, came out the year before this. She starred as Maid Marian in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yep.
So that's like what I know her as. So I know her as a much more positive role.
After I saw The Mask.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I had the reverse.
You thought Marion was going to turn into a villain in the end?
No, he saw it he saw the Robin Hood Men in Tights way after this film. So
yeah,
so did I. I mean, I'd heard much about Robin Hood Men in Tights at the time, but it was not my first go-to film for me. With Robin Hood. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was my main go-to film.
For me, it was the Disney version was the first one. So,
And Robin Hood Men in Tights had one of the best. Talking about Prince of Thieves, one of the best gaslighting moments of one movie toward another. It's like, why should we listen to you? Because unlike some other Robin Hood, I speak with a British accent.
And everybody's like, ooh.
Yes.
So,
actually, though, if you want to go back to the beginning with Errol Flynn, Robin Hood.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yep.
Or Robin and Marion with
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. So,
I just still
Oh
haven't
well,
seen
so we'll
that.
keep going. So they stick out the bank and then moving on.
yep.
Uh-huh.
So what happens is Dorian goes to this one guy who is totally afraid of Nico, but he's totally okay with helping Dorian out with
He
Stacey.
goes to the doctor who's going to rob the bank for him.
Late great Reggie
The doctor
Catherine.
is in.
Yeah. Another great character actor we've seen many times over the years, including, unfortunately, the unfortunate Fantastic Four. But
And House of Cards.
but St. Vincent was an awesome movie. Anyway.
So the doctor ends up going to the bank, but just
The mask beats them to the punch because the mask robs the bank first.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
just like barely ahead of them because they were
need a
already
little-
there, ready to rob it.
Yeah, the mask
So-
needs money to get into the Congo Bongo Club. So he's just like, well,
But yet,
I'm going to rob this bank.
he doesn't need money, and that's kind of the weird thing because he could just throw them aside and just walk on in. But that's not how he
Right.
rolls.
No, he goes robs the bank just because. So
Can't make the scene if you don't have the green, and the moth flies out of his pocket. And it's like, I feel you, man.
Yeah.
So he goes up in this white stretch limo.
Stretch,
and when I say stretch, I mean it.
Really stretches out.
You hear
Up into the
that?
horizon.
You hear that generally, and he pulls up and he's like, "Do you happen to know my friends Charlie, Frankincense and Myrrh or whatever?"
Jackson.
No. No, he said the guy asked if he was on the list, and he's like, no, but you might know my friends. And wasn't it like Franklin,
Jackson, and
Jackson?
He actually didn't say Franklin.
Oh, he didn't?
Oh,
Was it Jackson? Well, I know it was Jackson.
Jackson, Jefferson, and
Jackson and
Washington.
Was
No.
it Washington? It wouldn't have been
Basically,
Washington?
he used three
Yeah.
denominations of money essentially.
Right.
Yep.
I think it was Grant.
Jackson.
Did he say
It
Grant?
might have been Grant. I think
It might have
yeah.
been Grant. I remember noticing that he didn't say Franklin, and I was like, huh. So he's throwing 20s?
Well, yeah. It's easier to change those at the clubs, you know.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
but he ends up getting a table in the club just about when Tina Carlisle ends up going on for a number, and meanwhile, while he
He
starts,
turns into the Tex Avery wolf while she's singing.
well, plus you get some heartbeat moment and a couple of moments where he drops his jaw,
Yeah.
which are some
Yeah,
interesting.
this is
special
fully
effects.
unleashed cartoonish Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Like where all of his overacting and exaggerated facial expressions just completely play into everything perfectly. Like it could not. You almost don't need CGI.
And
But,
it's better than how he did with Ace Ventura. Ace Ventura, I thought was okay as a child. It's amusing, but as an adult, it gets annoying very quickly. But
I've never
with him
seen it,
playing that
actually.
as the mask.
Wow.
It's all right. You're better off. But
At least the first one. The second
Yeah,
one,
but,
actually, much more.
I've never seen Dumb and
Yeah.
Dumber either.
Really?
You're not missing
Yeah.
that
Really?
much there either.
Well, my Blu-ray of this is okay. So interesting bit of trivia. So the Mask Blu-ray by itself costs $10.
Mhm.
The Mask Blu-ray, which comes in a 2-pack with Dumb and Dumber and is the same disc with a lot of extra features, and I mean a lot of extra features, is $3. They pay you to take
I mean-
Dumb and Dumber.
people like Dumb and Dumber,
They
so
do.
I mean,
I like Dumb and Dumber.
I'd have to
I
watch
do
it
to a
again.
certain extent. I mean,
It's
there
just
are
such an
certain scenes.
it's such an oversaturation of Jim Carrey that you kind of miss a lot of, like the Cable Guy. By the time the Cable Guy hit, there was such an oversaturation of that same basic like manic Jim Carrey that you were just kind of going,
It was just kind of like enough.
But then later on, you appreciate it later.
Cable Guy
also, I don't think people were
audience's feet at the time, though, because of given how dark it was compared to.
Yeah, I think they weren't ready for the darkness.
Oh yeah, and again, I think again, it was just one of those things. Oversaturation. It's like
Jim
any of these
Carrey's
other
antics-
actors that they just
Jim Carrey's
oversaturated.
antics, Jim Carrey's antics before The Mask were definitely a lot more drier and a lot more satiristic than satirical.
This is back when they were typecasting him, though, and that was this is a reason why I am glad that he did get the chance to try and break out. The Majestic fell flat because people were expecting the manic Jim Carrey, which is sad because it was an amazing film. The Truman Show, amazing film. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
Man on the Moon, yes.
Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
He's an amazing actor. It's just unfortunately people were trying so hard to keep saying, "No, do it again, do it again."
My second film that I like of Jim Carrey's was The Number 23.
That was a good one.
Oh, I love that film. Nobody likes that film, it seems, but I love that film. It's just
so
I love the mental health aspect of it.
Oh yeah. And he was good. He was good in Kick-Ass too, even though he
owned it.
Yeah, he was good in that role. Yeah,
he didn't tank his job in it. He just
No,
I like his paintings.
Yeah, they're interesting. Anyway,
so while he is at the club, that's when Dorian gets the news that his doctor is
that the bank robbery failed.
The doctor comes back mortally wounded. Yeah, and his right hand, who somehow survives the whole film. I just figured out for sure which character this was, but I love that his character is credited as Sweet Eddie. Denise Forrest, who's another character actor who I'd seen in Briscoe County Jr. and some other good stuff, X-Files and whatnot. But he's kind of this is almost a staple, I think, of a lot of these movies. Like the Joker had a similar sidekick in Batman. The long hair kind of stands off to the side, and I don't know.
But all throughout this whole thing, we have two detectives that are on the case of and trail of this green masked character that has attacked the automobile place.
Calloway and Doyle, right?
Yeah, correct. And those are an interesting comedy.
Calloway is like super serious and plays as the straight man, like the
and moderately.
I could almost watch another movie with them too.
It'd be a fun movie. Doyle's just the fun party animal.
They could have made that transition, and they could go with the comics and made him the Mask.
Yeah.
And received the Mask, and that could have gone well as a sequel, especially with that actor. I think that would have been fun.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they
had Jim Carrey back.
Unfortunately, they went with that other guy.
That doesn't sound good. What would sound good to you? Breakfast. Doyle.
So while
banter, such a great couple.
The reason why I bring up them is because they kind of come into the foreplay as Dorian is shooting off rounds at the Mask, because evidently the Mask has turned his band into some zoot suits, and that's when we hear the song "Hey Petruchio," which is kind of an interesting jazzy, bluesy number.
It's like swing.
Yeah, swing.
Like big band swing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And he ends up dancing with Tina, and
It's a pretty crazy dance number. Like it's very
literally
elaborate.
knocking her off her feet.
Sweet Eddie recognizes him in the back room and is like, "That's the guy. That's our guy." So immediately, him and his thugs go in, and he does some great comedic things. I mean, at first he's like a Russian dancer. He's like, wait. And of course he does a nod to Elvis during this thing, and then of course he accepts an Oscar for his performance.
And Dorian and his goons just stand there like, what is happening? Like they look so.
I do like how the goon is crying.
Yeah.
And Dorian standing there like, okay, come on.
So the part where he's supposed to be doing his dying scene. What was your favorite impression? For me, it was him doing an impression of Clark Gable.
Tell Scarlett I do give a damn. Tell Auntie M to let old Yeller out. I think that was my favorite, where I was like, okay, we're going really far with this.
That was his specific nod to like Wizard of Oz and Old Yeller. So I thought Gone with the Wind, which is kind of funny now, given the Gone with the Wind's current situation. But
it's not that bad. The Blu-ray's only $20 now.
But in any case, so after that, in the whole foray, one of the gun blasts actually blasts a piece of his pajamas off onto the floor, which the detective picks up, and he goes straight to, and he's like, I love how he's just like, "It kiss."
Yes.
You're telling me there's two idiots running around town with pajamas like this?
He tries to say that someone stole him.
Meanwhile, Milo is going to the doorknob and barking at it while he's trying to get to the door.
For context, so Stanley wakes up and he's holding the mask. He opens the closet door, and a huge pile of money that he took from the bank falls out.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to cram it all back into the closet as quickly as he can, while Milo's like fighting him for a frisbee and distracting him. Like, this is the police! Open up! And you've got all this stolen money you're trying to cram into your closet.
Now, is this before or after Nico threatens Dorian to get the hell out of Dodge by the end of the week or whatever?
The part where Dorian gets threatened happened before the
robbery.
Yeah.
Dorian gets threatened by his boss. It's like, I hear you're making your own moves. You can't do that. I'm giving you a week to get out of town.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that he knows that this has gone down, that the mask has someone else. Well, he's been put
the bounty out on the mask.
Meanwhile, getting arrested at the same time by the detectives, and puts a bounty out. How much? Like
50,000.
50,000?
Yeah, 50 grand.
That's a lot of dough for someone. So Peggy ends up going and finds out somehow how that Stanley kissed his mask, and kind of goes after goes and tries to look for him. Meanwhile,
the mask. Tina asks Stanley if he knows the mask, and he's like, "Sure, I do." And he kind of sets up like a date with the mask for Tina.
Mm-hmm.
I even taught him a few moves myself.
Even
right. College buddies.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they decide to meet at sunset, and it just so happens that the detectives are following it.
There is a little bit of a scene where he goes and talks to the mask expert, who's Ben Stein, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Interesting piece, Mr. Ipkiss. I'd say 5th century Scandinavian, possibly a representation of Loki," which is about the only explanation we get for what the mask is. It's like a chaos item related to
Well, and he was on his regular TV earlier in the film, and he was talking to some news person.
was
Like,
TV in a program.
We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
Which is how he knew to. In the animated series, I think he's like Stanley's like regular therapist or something.
Yeah.
Well, he clearly thought he needed a regular therapist.
Yeah.
I can carry over into that other mask movie.
That movie does actually, though, explain it a heck of a lot more. But again, that's about all the good I can see from that.
What movie? I still don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, so the cops tail Stanley to the park, and he transforms into the mask after talking with Tina briefly. And he comes on a little too strong for Tina's liking, I think.
Is it written in the stars? Are we meant to be?
He basically turns into Pepe Le Pew for this scene.
Exactly.
And
then, actually, I think one of my favorite parts was where he was butchering the way he's butchering the French. He says something like, he's like approaching, he's like, "Je t'adore, je t'adore. Window, I don't care."
And then all of a sudden the cops are like, "Freeze!"
The cops are like, "I need backup now." Freeze! And he freezes solid in a block of ice. Tina runs off. It's like, put your hands in the air. But you told me to freeze.
All right,
unfreeze. I love the scene where they're searching his pockets. It's like Rubber Chicken.
Yeah.
Picture of Calloway's wife.
Actually, that picture of Calloway's wife. Picture of Calloway's wife. That was a picture
you married her.
Who played Dean Wormer's wife in Animal House.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, I didn't know that was a callback to anything. I thought it was just like a zany moment.
Oh, it was an actual callback to Animal House. I didn't realize that either.
Margaret, you son of a bitch!
What? You married her?
With like a fish and like runs away.
Right. No, I do like. I read something. One thing I did read in the trivia about that was apparently they had like he had like. I think the pants were cut open and there were people underneath like just feeding stuff up. So that, the props people were just feeding stuff up and they were literally just pulling whatever. I was like, that was a fun way to do that.
Well, anyways, he runs out of the park, closes the door, and he bars the thing several times when all of a sudden he turns around and his eyes, skull, all come out of his face. Like, yeah! And the whole entire
SWAT team is there, like with the guns trained on him. It's like, "It's over, Ipkiss. Put your hands on your head."
And then, of course, he has a small smile, and he goes, And then, of course, he bursts into the song that Ricky Ricardo.
Ricky Ricardo.
Ricky Ricardo.
No, I could say that would not have flown today, because a lot of that would be considered cultural appropriation. Really, if you think about it. Because you think about it, it is basically a white guy singing a Latin song, and that would be considered.
Well, a green guy in this case.
Yeah. So
I don't think Ricky Ricardo has the same cultural.
Again, it's
on your audience's today. So
again, we're talking like 50s cultural relations versus current. It is very different time anyway.
Well, I mean, if you want to get current, I mean, the cops would just shoot him like as soon as he twitched.
Right.
So.
Yeah, which is almost the case. Well, actually, no, not necessarily. Depends on the situation.
No, he's able to enchant them with the magic of dance.
Right.
Yes.
Which actually, this was also something that the studio balked at, and they wanted to get rid of it. But I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of glad they didn't.
This is one of the best parts. This is one of the best sequences.
Yeah.
You got an offer to sing in Vegas.
Jim Carrey.
The SWAT team got an offer from Vegas. It's like, Doyle.
I think Doyle gets a
Poor
lot.
Doyle. Doyle just gets yelled at by Calloway, and like every time Doyle tries to do something fun, like Doyle starts dancing, it's like, you start dancing, I'll blow your brains out. I almost hear Doyle go, "Aw," at the end of every line when he interacts with Calloway. Like Calloway will say something mean, and he'll be like, "Aw."
Come on, guys, that's the mask. Get after him.
Snap out of it.
So he ends up running into an alley, which is about where Peggy Brandt
That's where
says,
Peggy
"Get
finds
in
him.
the car, Stanley. Get in the car." And so she takes him to some warehouse, and he's like telling her his whole confessional, and he thought that she was going to kill him, and that didn't happen because Dorian and his men showed up, and she was like, "You're
It's like,
late."
what took you so long? I was vamping for 20 whole minutes here.
And so she sells him out to Dorian Tyrell, which pretty lame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, but I have to keep my condo. It's like, you witch.
Girls gotta pay rent. Yeah.
But
Sold him out for rent.
in any case, his men end up turning him upside down to try to get him to say what he'd already said. Already, you just put the mask on, and that's how it's supposed to work.
You just put it on. And he's like, okay. And he starts putting as Dorian starts putting the mask to his face, like a storm cloud appears above his head, and it's like,
Boss.
Be careful, boss.
Careful, boss.
Like his henchmen actually give a damn. They're good henchmen, you can tell.
So ultimately, he's like, so the police are looking for the mask. We'll give them the mask.
And we get one of the movies. We get one of the movie's best jokes in this upcoming scene.
Well,
where Calloway's like,
get
the have my badge for breakfast. Don't worry, Calloway. Something will happen. Like, yeah, Stanley Ipkiss will fall into my lap.
Yeah.
Honk, honk. They throw him out of a car into his lap.
Well, first we get a scene where Milo actually sees him in the car, and that's when Milo jumps out of the window and follows the car.
You go to his apartment to retrieve the money.
Yep. So ultimately, the dog ended up at the jailhouse, and while Stanley was at the jail, Tina came, and that's kind of like a moment where she was like, "Oh, so you really are the mask?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am the mask." And
they almost kiss.
tells her to
It's
be
like
careful.
it's like a sweet moment where she's like, I had a real connection with you, and it's like, oh.
So what are you gonna do? I'm gonna get away for a little while. I'll let you know. I'll be in touch. And so she goes off, and then he
gets captured pretty much right away.
Yep, and he hears her screaming down the way, and that's when he calls for Milo.
Somebody's being attacked in the alleyway. Come on, man, serve and protect.
Yeah.
So then he picks up his dog Milo, who it just so happens to have spent the night outside, and he's like, "Milo, put some effort into it."
You know how I told you not to jump on people? Well, forget that. Jump as high as you can.
Put some effort into it.
I do like they get him in there. He comes in and is like, "No, not the cheese, the keys."
Yeah, Milo knows how to identify keys, so he has Milo. He gets Milo into his cell. He releases Milo into the precinct. It's like, get the keys. And Milo picks up like a piece of cheese from the guy's scan, which not the cheese, the keys.
And so ultimately brings the keys over to his jail cell, which he gets out, grabs the cop's gun. Cop wakes up,
Knocks the cop out.
and then he runs into Kellaway. And Kellaway's like, "Hey, you can't. You're not gonna be able to get away with.
You're not gonna walk out of here like this." He's like, "You're right. Come on, cuff me. You're gonna take me out of here as your prisoner." And Kellaway cuffs him, and he's like, "Ow!
You got the wrong guy. I tell you."
It was the one-armed man."
And they get into the car and go away, and that's when you have the scene with Doyle.
Well, hey, we get another great Doyle moment. It's like, "Hey, where are you taking Ipkiss? Ixnay, he has at a and unge. Oh, pig Latin. Ise uye aderlay." Like completely not noticing what he said.
Yep.
Nick's back. He's got a gun. He's like, "Oh, see you later."
And then, of course, the dog hops in, and they end up going towards. Meanwhile, Dorian has taken Tina and prepared.
He's going to steal the money from the charity ball at the club and blow up the club with Tina inside.
And he ends up showing up at the club, and he to Nico, he's like, "I'm just an ex-employee who's come for his back pay, or should I say, payback." So,
Yeah.
We get that confrontation where, like, we see what Dorian's idea of powers that he wants to have from the mask.
Mhm.
Like, he gets shot a bunch of times and he just sucks all the bullets in and spits them back.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So-
shoot
Oh,
them
yeah.
back.
Out.
The feeling he would have had a lot of darker powers.
and that's about the time that Stanley shows
Oh,
up.
I cut you off there, Forrest. What were you saying?
Literally wipes out Nico's gang in seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And Stanley shows up at the ball, sneaks in through the back way, knocks out one of the dudes there, and sneaks in with a gun and runs into his buddy. What is it, Charlie? Right?
Runs into Charlie and he's like, "Here, Charlie, take this gun, start sneaking people out the back." And Charlie's just kind of like, "Is this really you?" This is one of the fun things about the scene is that we get Stanley kind of like growing into himself, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing like a bunch of things that he never thought he would be able to do.
Mhm.
You know, he's
The
like
character
being,
gets a heck of a lot more of a chance than he had. In the
yeah,
comic book.
he's being heroic. You know, he's helping rescue people. You know, he's
Mhm.
bringing the fight to the bad guys.
Going to kick some ass. Daddy's
I
gonna
think-
kick some ass.
I think my favorite scene in this movie is a little while later, like when he's actually gotten into a fight with Dorian and he's just like punching Dorian in the face over and over again, and he stops for a second and he's like, "Wow, I'm winning!" Like, he kind of, like, he can't believe like what's going on.
Which, meanwhile, Tina has been wrapped to a fucking post with some TNT to her. So she's kind of
Very
incapacitated at the moment.
Cartoony kind of villain thing to do. Oh, tie some dynamite to the girl.
But in any case, meanwhile, outside with Kellaway, the dog just so happens to open up the door and get out of the car, and he's like, "Smart dog."
Tina tricks Dorian into taking the mask off, and she kicks it out of his hands, and Milo in the club catches it,
Yes.
and we get Milo mask briefly. Like Milo puts on the mask and becomes like demon dog.
So Milo, once he gets the mask on, he kind of becomes kind of like a Jaws version of a terrier. So, but jokingly and sparingly, because as soon as he gets caught, he turns around and pees on the fucking guy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what did everyone think of this segment here?
Well, it goes to show you that there was a lot less of a repressed personality with almost everybody but Ipkiss in this movie.
And then ultimately the mask gets back into Stanley's hand. he puts the mask back on, and he ends up
And he transforms for the fourth time.
Yep.
You know, he dives behind the bar after the mask. You don't know if he's been able to put it on in time. The bar gets riddled with bullets, and the mask
you
pops
miss
back
me?
out, and he's like, "Did you miss me?" And he takes a drink, and like water pours out of a bunch of holes in his body. He's like,
I guess
guess
so.
not. And then he pulls out what? So I used to rent the Mask video game for Super Nintendo, and then the Mask pulls out what they would call in the game the big guns,
Yeah.
which is
And he does this Dirty Harry impression.
Yeah.
And he's he does the Clint Eastwood impression.
you go ahead
Well,
and make.
Do I
okay.
feel lucky? Well, do you, punks? And
And like rockets lock on, like Gatling guns start spinning up.
All run away, and then you see the bang, 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 bang.
Bang
Well,
flags
at
fly.
least the villains actually like they thought about it and they're like,
Nope.
I'm not going to do this.
And then
I
he-
don't feel lucky.
And then he goes. He gets to go over, rips the duct tape off Tina's hand, and that's when about Dorian starts to run towards, and he's like, "This
Well,
guy is incorrigible."
First he swallows the dynamite.
Yep.
And I think
Well,
that's
actually,
another one of my favorite lines. Like he swallows the dynamite,
That's
belches
after
the fireball.
Dorian comes.
And that's a spicy meatball.
That's a spicy meatball.
That
Oh,
happens
so
after.
good.
That happens after he's flushed Dorian down this gigantic.
No,
Yeah,
Just-
No,
he-
that's when he
Dorian
swallows
after.
the bomb.
He takes care of the dynamite first because the dynamite has like 5 seconds left when he gets to Tina.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, he basically saves the day, and you see Dorian's last moment is down the whirlpool. And I follow
he takes a flush lever on the wall and flushes Dorian. Dorian jumps in the fountain to rush him, and he flushes Dorian down the fountain. You were good, kid, real good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best. Say,
Right.
Right.
Which, if anyone knows anything about my reviews, I actually have 2 clips from this movie that are playing through my Delusions of Grandeur intro. So I love several scenes from this film.
so much of it is like so much of it is highly quotable and memorable. So I don't blame you at all. Like there's so much to love in this movie.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, the quotation. I mean, quoting it's almost as quotable as Evil Dead if you go into that, which I consider is one of the most quotable films of all time, or film series.
PARTY because I gotta.
Somebody stop me! Like I say that a lot.
Right.
Like especially if I'm having a manic day where I just can't be contained.
Right.
So ultimately, when they're coming out of the club, Kellaway is like, "Mayor, stop that man!" And when he walks straight into the mayor, he's like, "Watch it, junkie!"
Mayor Tilton. Like that man is the mask. No, Dorian Tyrell was the mask. You know, I want to see you in my office first thing tomorrow. That doesn't sound good. Oh yeah, well, what would sound good to you? Breakfast. God, I
Yes.
love Doyle.
And then, of course, in the end, we have Stanley Ipkiss throwing the mask back to the place that he found.
Back into he throws it off the bridge again. He's like, "Are you sure you want to get rid of it?" He's talking to Tina. It's like, "Are you sure you want to get rid of this? Because it's just me. Without it, it's just me." And she's actually the one who like takes the mask and
Well,
throws
she's the
it
one
off
who really
bridge.
throws it in the end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Charlie jumps in after it, but Milo beats him to it.
Especially when you in the clip before, he's still sitting in the car. Milo is so you don't entirely expect the dog to be swimming back with the freaking mask. It's fucking hilarious.
And then he's able to do smoking himself without the mask. So you get the feeling a bit of it rubbed off.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
So,
It's such a satisfying movie. Like,
final thoughts on the film, everyone.
What
love
about
it.
special effects and stuff like that too?
Yeah, it's
This
actually
has, like,
was an Oscar nominee for that.
this has perfectly aged CG. Like,
Yeah.
the CG from this holds up so much better than CGI from other movies of the era.
Yeah.
I think partially because it's supposed to be cartoony. Like,
Yeah.
even the stuff that's supposed to be realistic still holds up because it looks just surreal enough.
Right.
I was actually surprised at how good they did with this film, effects wise. I mean, in reality, this is probably one of the better films, surprisingly better films with that you've seen for the time.
For the time, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
The effects were handled by Industrial Light and Magic, and
And the makeup. I mean,
images.
Makeup was great.
Yeah.
I was
And the costume
very
design.
impressed.
Costume design was awesome.
Oh yeah.
I mean, those pajamas.
Pajamas were obviously the high point of the film.
I know, I think one of the high points for me is when the alarm clock jumps out of his pants and he's trying to smash the clock. I specifically remember that because there was an action figure called Killin' Time Mask, and it came with a mallet and the.
I remember that.
I think my favorite scene that I'll take from this particular film is when he's jumped out of the window and he's walking along. He gets accosted by this gang, and they're like, "What time is? Do you happen to have the time?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do. It's about
2 seconds before I honk your nose and pull your underwear over your head."
For me, right before that part, my favorite part was my favorite part where he jumps out the window, he lands on the pavement, and he breaks the fourth wall and says, "Look, Mom, roadkill, ha ha ha."
He peels himself off the street.
At him earlier in the movie, starts honking at him again, but this time he gets back at him with his own horn.
And on the horn it says "squeeze gently," and he does. And the fucking thing is like a fog.
Yeah.
Breaks all the glass.
Yeah.
And I just love the whole sequence of the gang and the balloon.
Oh, that balloon show! That balloon show that he puts on with the gang is great. Like, for you, a giraffe, and like the one biker girl with them is like, wow.
Sorry,
He's like impressed.
Sorry, son. The poodle was.
And that was one that was really.
Oh yeah, it's just Rabbit had to put her down.
And that was very much fan service for the comic fans.
Movie.
I mean, that was very much fan service for the comic fans, especially. No, there were a lot of them. I feel like the balloon animal one was probably the biggest fan service that they supplied there.
I just laughed so hard at that lady in that scene. Like, the guy gets handed the giraffe, and she just like grabs it. Wow.
Well, and I do like that when he's saying Cuban feet, that was his actual voice singing it. So,
Jim Carrey can sing.
He's saying that song wearing those fake teeth.
Those were some intense fake teeth.
But what about you, Brandon? If there was a favorite scene that you could take from this film?
Oh, there were a lot of fun things in that. I really like the initial nightclub scene where he shows up with the zoot suit and just goes in on it, and in general takes things back. But let's not forget the music too, to talk about that as well.
Oh, the music was great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this has when it comes to score, this has one of those scores where it complements the film, but you don't really notice it a whole lot. And then it has those big musical numbers that really stand out. On top of having a score that's let's say more subtle than others.
You can't ignore the music with this film, especially, and even the setting. I love the setting with Edge City, because even though it was in modern time, no, 90s modern times, obviously, it was still a kind of a 90s via the 50s, if you know what I mean.
The music.
I was not at all.
I have a real sense of that. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was not at all wrong to talk about Stray Cat Strut. I'm looking at the track list here, and there is a track by the Brian Setzer Orchestra called Straight Up.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely a lot of their stuff sounded like that. And of course, the band playing in that Pachuco scene, we got Royal Crown Review. They are definitely in that same mold of the kind of, like Brian Setzer Orchestra is sort of like neo swing married with rockabilly. It's not really one or the other, and it's really its own monster. But I feel like Royal Crown Review would fit alongside them.
Randy Edelman was the musician behind the soundtrack, the composer. And he was behind The Last Mohicans, The Mummy Tomb of the Emperor, the 6 Days and Nights.
This one did win.
Anaconda.
He did win the film music award from the BMI Awards, so at least someone felt like the music was worth it. And that's actually something, considering that the movie that came out that year that was winning everything was Forrest Gump. You also had Pulp Fiction and Maverick. You had some kick-ass soundtracks that year.
And he's also the composer behind The Adventures of Grisso Connor Jr.
Oh, very good.
So, and right before this, he did the composing for Angels in the Outfield. So
he and what's his name? What's his name?
After this, he did Tall Tale. So, that was, but in any case, I thought it was. He also did Dragonheart. So the music behind Dragonheart.
MacGyver. Mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
But in any case,
Anaconda.
that. So, but
the Anaconda with
yeah, the Anaconda with the full body and the snake. Yes.
Yes. Oh, jeez.
But Jake, if there was a favorite scene that you could take from this film,
if I had to say a favorite, there's a lot of good moments in this one. I mean, yeah, the whole scene in the nightclub with the zoot suit and the dance and all that is just so iconic to the movie, I think. It's just a great scene all around. And some of that comment about those pajamas are impossible, I just find that amusing for whatever reason. But I think some of the quieter.
I keep thinking about the. I was going to say Zoot Suit Riot. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, no, that did come later. I know that came. That was like 96 or 97. I think that song came out. But yeah, I definitely think that too. But I would say also some of the quieter scenes between Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz were really good. Because again, both of them are underrated actors. So yeah, there were several, but I wouldn't be able to pick one specific. Those, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss about this film?
I think it's hard for me to pick I think we're doing favorites, right? It's hard for me to pick a favorite because I just love so much of this movie. I think my favorite line would be "Somebody stop me," because I do say that a lot, especially if I'm having like a really up day, and I'm really manic and full of energy. Like, somebody stop me! It's like, yeah. But I think watching it again, this is the first time I've watched it, I think, as an adult in a long time. I think my favorite scene is maybe the bank robbery scene where we see the footage of him just zipping around the bank, and he's like screwing around, he's jumping in the money, he's mugging to the camera, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is so much fun. Like, I think a lot of this movie I kind of related to as an adult, which, you know, watching it as a kid, you know, you think, oh, we're having a fun adventure, and it's like, oh, here's some guy and his life sucks, and it's like, oh,
Stanley is I totally identify with Stanley as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think many of us can identify with Stanley, really, if you think about it.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think there has been a character, somewhat at least like Stanley, maybe somewhat in our lives, or we have been Stanley at one point in time.
He has a relatively good job. We are aspiring to be Stanley.
Well, I'm not exactly sure that I have the type of job that he has. But, I mean, that's kind of.
I would consider myself. I would consider myself on that level, because you really have to wear a mask, as they say. We all wear masks. Some of us better than others, but in truth, speaking as somebody who is in the mental health field and does mental health therapy for a living, it's that's the way that you do it. You talk about things, and people wear their masks. You wear your public mask, but who you are, you only really share that with a few people, if any people at all, really. So it's but how much they wear that mask, that's where the mask comes in, because that's where it totally contrasts with who they show them. And Jim Carrey's character obviously was a huge contrast to who he was in reality versus who he was as the mask.
Well, and how many?
That's kind of an ironic thing too, because earlier today I was watching the Watchmen TV series from last year, and one of the themes of that movie is that masks make people cruel.
Well, and I guess if you wanted to talk about
like they liberate people to, I guess, be more. I guess the theme was that they embolden people.
If you
and that's
look,
really the theme of this movie too, is the mask emboldens him to really be himself.
If you also look at the movie The Lone Ranger, where there is a certain time to wear the mask as well. You know, if you're wearing a mask, there are times to wear the mask and times not to wear a mask too. You know.
Well, I mean, think about it. Everybody here works at something or does something. I mean, let's say, like Dustin, you're in college. You get a professor who says, "I need this paper today." You can't just say, "Screw you, hippie. I need to do the rest of my stuff, and I'll do it in my own time. I'll get it to you later." You can't just say that. You might think it at the time. Or Dave, if you get like an irate person asking about, for something totally out of the way, you can't just say, "Fuck off. Go home." That would probably lose you your job. These are things that happen with the mask. I mean, I don't see Jake going up at the library throwing books at people's heads just because they annoy him.
Although
not yet.
I want to. So these are things that go on. I mean, we all have these things. I mean, that you have to put on that. I mean, politicians are experts. I mean, to the point where some of them don't even realize what's the mask and what's real anymore. And that's the scary part, I think.
Alrighty. So on that note, I think we ought to wrap up this discussion up here and kind of go through our bios here. So why don't I start with you, Forrest? What? Who are you, and what do you do?
I'm Forrest. I'm based in Long Island, New York. I recently produced a slasher film called Camp Murder, and I have I recently produced another movie that's coming out soon called Strix. And I also do a bit of vlogging. I also do movie reviews. for another do movie reviews. Also like love movies and big movie and comic book fan. So
Awesome. And I think that you had an excellent view on the comic book side of things. So I think this was a perfect discussion for you. So in any case, moving over to Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm a student at UW, living here in Milwaukee. I collect horror movie stuff. Anything really, like masks, props, Blu-rays mostly nowadays. And I have a channel called The Crypt of Horrors where I show off stuff as I find it. Hasn't been a whole lot of updates to my channel lately, but hopefully after I'm more stable in the semester, I can post a few more things. So I unboxed the Scarlet Box Hellraiser set from Arrow USA a while ago. That's gonna go live at some point soon. I also have an Instagram for my horror collection. Also the Crypt of Horrors, and you can follow me on Twitter at Cryptaxis. So I want to eventually get everything shortened into Cryptaxis as like a brand, kind of. So that I don't have to say the Crypt of Horrors every time because it's kind of a mouthful. So yeah, give me a follow across all the different dimensions.
Alrighty. And Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Septum Sen versus the World. We took a big hit with some damage, so it's kind of put our channel on hiatus as we are struggling with a lot of financial and other loss. But we do hope to get back in the near future. We're working towards it ever so slowly. I do hope that by October we'll be fully running. But until then, you should check out our anime Anticlimax #3, where we do the series Cowboy Bebop, which is an excellent pairing with our movie discussion with the Cowboy Bebop movie on this channel. So we also do vlogcasts still, and I do still update what's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD. I actually go through, look at all the different sites, see where the errors and stuff are on them. So I can give you an actually pretty accurate representation as to what's coming out on Blu-ray, DVD, and 4K for the next week. So it's a so if anything, you can use this as an information source. I also do work for Inside Movies Galore, helping with getting all of the shows ready and running the schedule. So we are ever looking forward into October, which is the witching hour, so to speak. And I want to try and get you, the viewer, involved. So if you're on one of our channels that has been voting, which is Animes and Collections Incorporated for your Facebook fans out there, Movie Collectors, Moe's Tavern, or Talk Movies with Us. And if you're one of the members of the Inside Movies Galore crew, I ask you to take a look for my request for movies and drop me a movie in the comments that you'd like to see us cover. And we will be looking towards narrowing those down so that we can look at yours and our suggestions and see which ones reign supreme for October. But we are still in free for all fall, so we've got some excellent stuff to look forward to. And next week we have a great pre-show, hopefully hosted by Mo with Wizards. An amazing film, and I am very much looking forward to watching that again. Somebody will have to send it to me because it's buried because of the flooding. And Jake will be leading us on a discussion of an amazing film that helped inspire the Hunger Games series called Battle Royale. I think we're going to have some great deal of fun next week.
Oh, yeah.
This month has got some amazing things coming. I hope we'll see you all there.
Okay. Somebody stop me. So let's go over to Jake here, and why don't you tell us a little about who you are?
All right. Well, I am Jake, and I also am on Septum Sin versus the World. As he said, not so much right now. Unfortunately, the pickups are on hiatus, and the pile just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, waiting to get back into it.
It's good because we'll catch up on the dry spells, because those dry
Exactly.
spells are there, and we'll just be like,
Oh,
catching up
I
on
won't be
them.
having a dry spell for some time.
Exactly. Yeah, let's make it work.
But no, but then things just sit there forever. But anyway, and I, of course, am a collector of movies, music, all kind of media. I enjoy media very much, and enjoy talking about it with all you fine folks, and for all the fine folks at home. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with Bebop, so definitely check those out. And looking forward to. I'm very much looking forward to Battle Royale. That's one I've been wanting to do for a while, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And so definitely tune in.
Awesome. And my name is David Strege. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for taking that journey with me. And I want to thank Forrest for coming on for the last couple of times. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Appreciate and to getting to know more people who love to talk about films. And I started this journey out of boredom, and found a group of friends that I can call my brothers. So, but in any case, I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I do various video reviews and video pickup videos, and definitely check out some of my newest. I know I just recently did one on Camp Murder, so hopefully y'all check that out. I mean, regardless, just want the film to get seen. I could have gotten in on getting a copy myself, and I'm sure it'll be available somewhere down the road, anyways. And just look forward to seeing its reception down the way. So, but I'm also going to be doing some video pickups. Videos shortly. I know I've got some anime on the way, so I'm excited to share it with people. I just love sharing my collection with y'all, and I haven't even shared everything in my collection in the video, so it's kind of like a little bit of the old, a little bit of the new. It's like 3/4 of the way through, I started doing pickup videos. It's like, well, I gotta show you guys what else I have in my collection. So. In any case, like, share, and subscribe. Definitely looking forward to the films that we are going to be talking about next week. So stay tuned for some great fun. And alrighty then, let's say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Everyone.